And greetings and welcome to the QCast. This is season 4, episode 12. And folks, we have made it. Welcome to opening week 2023-24. Special week ahead, recording this on Sunday, November 5th. And tomorrow morning, we will officially be in opening week with games starting Wednesday. And this is another one of these long overdue QCast guests. We talked about this back a while ago. We never got it set up. The time is right, though, because my Titans open Friday against the battling Bishops of Ohio Wesleyan, and absolutely a must-have guest, Mike DeWitt, the head coach of Ohio Wesleyan. Mike, we've been seeing each other in gyms for many, many years now, and it's. Did you ever think we'd be doing a podcast together? Is my question for you.
And most certainly not. And as we were setting this up, I was trying to remember when we actually met, and I think it was at a tournament at Illinois Wesleyan. And I don't think we played Illinois Wesleyan that weekend, if I'm correct. I think we had lost to Wash U in the first round.
Right.
Illinois. I think the other team was Johnson and Wales from Rhode Island.
I think you're right. Yeah,
Right,
that was.
and we talked between games after we had gotten drilled by WashU. First time I met you, did not think you would get into the podcasting world, but here you are, and here I am. So glad to see you. And we've obviously seen each other many times over the years since then. But
No,
good to talk to you.
You too. You know, I start the QCast this way a lot, and I'm aware of it. I try not to, but like when I looked at your coaching resume, and it said you've been a head coach 29 years, of which 24 of those are at Ohio Wesleyan. It's
Yeah.
kind of like when I interview Ron Rose, I'm like, I'm really starting to feel old because 29 years, Mike. Where the heck is that gone?
Yeah, if you feel old, you can imagine how I feel. And I am. When I started at Ohio Wesleyan, I was the youngest coach in the North Coast Athletic Conference by a significant margin. Now I am the oldest coach in the North Coast Athletic Conference by a significant margin since Steve Moore retired a couple years
Yeah.
ago. Bill Brown from Wittenberg a year or two before that. And then Bill Fenlon was the last one who was older than me to retire, and I was extremely disappointed he decided to do that because I took over the mantle of being the oldest coach in our conference, and will probably be that way for a while because I have no plans on retiring soon. So, but yeah, when you put it like that, starting my 25th year at Ohio Wesleyan and my 30th year overall, it's been a long ride, and it's been really fun too.
So for those that don't know Mike's background, two at Hiram, 3 at center, 24 at Ohio Wesleyan. You know, Mike, I was preparing for this and thinking when you came into this role at Ohio Wesleyan, I imagine the league was Wittenberg and Worcester, and we
some
all
people
know
some people still think it
is. Some people still think it is. Here's the data though. Here's the hot take. I went back through the last 10 seasons. I went back through the last 10. I didn't do the COVID season, obviously. And you guys have the second most conference wins behind Worcester. To me, that was like, I kind of thought that's what that data was going to lead to. But you got to be pretty thrilled at where you've got the program, considering what you walked into, considering the powers that have been Worcester and Wittenberg tradition, not to mention all the other great programs in the league. Wabash is really coming, right? And I think DePauw is going to get really good here quick. Just talk about that a little bit, where you feel like you have the program.
I could talk about it forever because one of my kind of pet peeves when I listen to people talk about our conference over the years is the narrative still is, well, after Worcester and Wittenberg, you know, who's going to be good in the league. And
right.
That narrative has not been true for a long time. But people who might not follow the conference closely, you know, it's easy to just say that's the way it is because that's the way it was. And so when I got the job back in 1999, my goal was to get in the conversation with Worcester and Wittenberg.
Right.
And, before that, it was definitely those two that had dominated the league, won most of the championships, so on and so forth. And I was taking a job where, you had Wittenberg in the conference, who is the all-time win leader in Division III.
Yep.
And you have Worcester, who has the most wins in this century of any Division III school. And as I was preparing for this, and I knew we'd probably talk about this, Worcester has won at least 20 games in every year since I've been the coach at Ohio Wesleyan, except for one, which was 2 seasons ago. And gosh, they won only 19.
Right.
So they've been dominant. And obviously Wittenberg's still been very, very good. And I think what I'm proudest of is it's not that Wittenberg and Worcester have gotten worse, is that we've elevated the program here at Ohio Wesleyan to the point where we're in the discussion as one of the top 3 teams in the league. And then now you add Wabash to that mix, and it's certainly not just a 2-team conference anymore. In the last 10 years, and we look at these things as well to talk to recruits about. We have finished in the top 3 in our conference 8 of the last 10 years. Worcester's finished in the top 3 10 times. We finished 8, and no one else has finished in the top 3 more than 5.
Right.
So I'm proud of the consistency that we've been able to develop, and we've had some years where we've not been as good, but I think to be a program where if your overall record is 500 and that's a big disappointment, I think you're accomplishing something if that's the worst you're going to be. And that's kind of where we're at right now. That's kind of our floor at this point, and I hope we can maintain that.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, the Worcester Wittenberg crowd, let's say, probably forget you had a three-peat in 15, 16, 17. You won the league 3 years in a row. Again, you have the second most wins in the league in the last 10. And so I think that's, I mean, huge kudos, because I remember, when you took the job, that was kind of the beginning of the D3hoops.com era. And it truly was Worcester Wittenberg. The only drama in the league was which one was going to win it, and then which one was going to be the at large. And so to come in and make noise, and like you said, now look, Wabash is picked to win it this year, and they were in a Final Four recently, and they're going to be really, really good. So it is not a 2-team league anymore. And I think you'd agree, Mike. Like I think that what Rusty's going to do at DePaul, I think he's going to get that thing rolling, taking over from Coach Fenlon, who did a great job. I think Rusty's going to have DePaul up near the top really soon too. And so
rumor has it they have a great recruiting class. DePaul finished 6th in our conference last year, and I think they had 18 or 19 wins overall. Like they're going to be really good. And another school that has kind of flown under the radar because they've been very young, but they're super talented, is Denison. Denison, I think, was picked 3rd in the conference this year because I think a lot of the coaches in this conference see the potential for that team. So, just to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, like there are other teams besides those traditional top 3 right now that can compete for this championship.
Talk about your team a little bit. So you were 16-10 last year. So had a good season last year, 16-10, second in the NCAC, and your crew here. Obviously, you lose a stud player. So there's no way the way I look at this is there's 2 ways we could say this is you return 7 of your top 9, but Jack Clement, 23 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. He was the NCAC player of the year. He was an All-American. He took exactly 33% of your field goal attempts, something like 500 out of 1,500 shots were from Jack Clement. Let's just start there. Is it's not often that you're asked to replace a guy like that, but you're in that position this year. So just talk a little bit what he meant to your program.
Yeah, so a couple comments about that. First of all, the fact that there's 500 shots available has a lot of our other guys really excited right now.
I bet it does.
Jack was one of the hardest workers we've had in our program here. And I love that kid to death. We had a couple, his freshman year, we struggled a little bit around 500, and then through the COVID season, but he worked incredibly hard to make himself an All-American basketball player. And I'll just say this, like over the past 10 years, we've had 7 All-Americans, and had to replace them. Nate Axelrod was a 3-time All-American, so we didn't have to replace him a couple of those years, but we've had to replace All-Americans before. And I think in a majority of those years, our record has been better the year after we lost those All-Americans. So that's what I'm telling our team this year, and we're trying to be as optimistic about it as possible, is that we're a good program, and the program is bigger than one person or one coach. And so we're going to do the best we can. We're going to play the style we want to play, and we're going to compete. And, we've had a really good preseason. We are trying to figure out who's going to take shots at the end of the game and those kind of things, because we've had that answered for us for the last couple of years.
Right.
And the thing that made Jack unique, especially with regard to basketball at the Division III level, is he could get you a good shot at the end of a shot clock on his own.
Right.
And that's there aren't a lot of guys at this level, or any level probably, that can do that. And so we're trying to figure out those kind of things, but we'll do it by committee. It's not going to be one person replacing all those numbers. He was such a prolific scorer. People don't realize he was our leading assist player too. Like, the ball was in his hands a lot. But I do think we have a lot of guys very excited for an opportunity to kind of show what they can do in his absence.
Yeah, you lose him, obviously, is the one that draws the attention. You also lose Grant Spicer, who is 10 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, one of your key guys. You returned 7 of 9 though. And so this isn't some kind of complete rebuild whatsoever. So Henry Hinkle returns, who's a 6'1" guard. He's a junior. He had a big year last year, 13 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. He was 3rd team NCAC. You return Tony Carter, David Rice, let's see, Isaac Ward, Reese Mitchell, Cole Metzler. I'm sure I'm missing someone in there, but again, there were guys that maybe statistically last year weren't leading the way for you, but they played a bunch, and they were key members of your bench. So I imagine a lot of those guys that saw the floor last year figure into your rotation in more prominent roles. Is that fair to say?
Definitely. Henry Hinkle was kind of one of our bigger recruits that we've had come here in a while. And he's, I think, one of the guys that's kind of poised to kind of take the mantle as kind of the go-to guy, I guess, although I think we have several. We have a 5-person senior class that some of whom you mentioned, some of whom you didn't, who I think are going to step up, and whether those roles change from not playing to playing a little bit, or from playing a little bit to playing a lot. I think they're ready for that. They did get some experience last year. It's just what we're going to have to figure out, and I think we'll figure it out as the year goes along, is what guys' roles are exactly, because they're going to be different than they were last year. Because, in addition to Jack, as you said, like, Grant Spicer was one of the best leaders we've had in our program, and someone we ran a lot of offense through, and he knew exactly when to go set a ball screen for Jack. Like, those two guys were kind of in sync a lot. And so, we're going through that process right now. And ironically, Grant Spicer is a graduate assistant coach at Otterbein, where he's coaching Jack now. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic for those two guys too.
This has been an interesting era to coach through with the COVID 5th year and transfer portal. I'm not aware of this. I suspect that you guys haven't had a revolving door of transfers coming in, kind of a la Illinois Wesleyan, without a grad program. I mean, as you know, we've had guys that were really good 4-year players that went on to Division II for their 5th year, because there's nothing left to do when you don't have grad. Now, and do you have any transfers that have come in this year? Or I suspect that you're a little bit like kind of what Ron Rose has had the last few years in that regard. Is that correct?
We actually did did bring in a transfer from Pitt Bradford named Philip Wallace, who will not be available until January because of a broken foot. But that was more of a typical transfer process and not
Sure.
necessarily related to COVID or an extra year or anything like that. So it was funny when everybody in the country knew Jack was transferring from Ohio Wesleyan. I got a text from Ron Rose, and it said, "I see the extra COVID year, no grad school, kind of got you guys too." And he goes, "I feel your pain."
Yes. Yeah.
And we were very similar to Illinois Wesleyan in that regard, and it was such a unique process to go through as Jack's coach because Jack had a great experience at Ohio Wesleyan, would have
Sure.
come back here in a second if it was possible, but it just wasn't. So the day, basically the week after our season was over, we talked about it. We put his name in the transfer portal, and his phone blew up
I can't imagine.
with interest, and he had some Division II offers.
Sure.
And I was surprised some Division Is didn't reach out because I think he's good enough. Maybe his size was a detriment, but that would be the only thing. But then some of the pretty much all of the really good Division III schools in our region reached out. And it was an interesting process. Jack, and we talked every day about it. And he had some very good options, and obviously ended up choosing Otterbein.
Yeah, it has been such a, and I'm glad that every kid that played through that 2021 horrendous year,
Yep.
I'm glad every kid got that year. At the same time, Mike, I'm proud of my alma mater and what Ron's done, because until getting our own guy Luke Yoder back, he's done this with no transfers. He's done this
Yep.
losing his guys. And, he had that Elite Eight team where I think I went through every team that we had played, and every team in the Final Four and every team in the Elite, everybody had fifth-year guys except Ron.
Yep.
And so I give a lot of kudos. There's a lot of coaches out there that I've talked to about this. And I do think that it's relevant to talk about, just that it's been an interesting period of time. We've got teams that have 4 or 5 all conference studs from the other places coming in for a year.
Yep.
So it just created, again, no one's doing anything wrong, but it's
Right.
been an interesting year to be around Division III because the disparities in the ability to do that. And so kudos to you guys for grinding through this period of time. And we got another year of it, don't we?
Exactly. And I agree with you 100%. I think there are certain schools that can take advantage of the opportunity that these guys have for a fifth year. And I agree with you. That should have happened. That, transferring should be easy. And like I said, kudos to those kids for taking advantage of it. But I happen to be coaching an institution that is not necessarily going to be able to take advantage of that because we don't have graduate school.
Right.
We generally, as an institution, don't attract a lot of transfers. So, our program's going to operate within the realm of the institution's philosophy. And so, I feel like we're probably very similar to Illinois Wesleyan and a lot of other places that are going through this for another year.
Right.
And I'll be pretty glad when it's kind of back to, quote unquote normal.
Me too.
Where it's freshmen, recruiting freshmen and not recruiting transfers and those kind of things, and everybody has to kind of do that.
Agree. And before someone tweets me, I do realize that we have Luke Yoder, who is a transfer. Now I put a little disclaimer on that, like he's our guy. He came back to us,
Right.
so I put it in a different category.
I do too.
So let's talk a little bit about the opening weekend. I've got several things to talk to you about, but I know that you and Ron are friends, and we've talked about that several times. Ron and I have talked about that several. I know he has great respect for you and your program. I think this will be maybe the third time that you and Ron have faced off as the head coaches of your alma maters. I believe it's the third. I can't remember. But let's talk a little bit about Friday night. So, both, I think both programs come into Friday in similar places, not really finished products, some questions to answer, but yet a lot of excitement and talent. How do you look at this matchup Friday night with the Titans?
Yeah, I think it's the fourth time Ron and I have
Oh,
played.
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
We played, I think,
90,
in Ron's first year at a
November
tournament at the Paw.
96. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were fortunate enough to win that game. And then Ron and I actually played at home and home.
Twice with Brady Rose era, I think.
Yes, and then we went to Illinois Wesleyan and won. And then they came to our place and won the next year with Brady as the point guard. And I know that was a big win for Ron because of his participation back in the 1988
his history
team.
in 1988. Correct.
Yeah, so he may have exercised some demons there.
I think so.
Yes, and it was a good game, and his team deserved to win. I felt good for him. But yeah, coming into this weekend, like I agree with you. I think we are going to be a team at Ohio Wesleyan that's going to be better later in the year. Like we're searching and trying to identify roles at this point that aren't necessarily defined. Illinois Wesleyan, from what I see from the outside, like they have Yoder coming back, which obviously is huge, but they do lose their two leading scorers from last year as well.
They sure do.
And so probably same situation, some players fitting into some new roles. And so again, probably two teams like probably really looking forward to Friday to kind of seeing what they have and being able to move forward with probably more questions than answers, but a good game for both of us for sure.
In terms of prepping for an opener, one of the things I found funny is when I texted you last week about doing this, you go, well, this is uncanny timing because I'm listening to the part of this QCast about the Soroka move. I don't know what.
Yes.
So you're digging into the Titans season preview episode. And so, Coach, is it fair to say, like early season, when you don't know where to find any information, you're going wherever you can to get a little scoop on whoever you're playing this weekend? Is it fair to say?
Wherever I can, I like lowered myself to listen to the QCast preview of the Illinois Wesleyan team. It was funny. Like I was like, my friends will laugh. I was working out on the treadmill and I just turned on your QCast and you were talking about Ron was talking about all the players and had coming back, and sounds like everyone's great and has a lot of size and can shoot really well. Like everybody. So that's a little scary. And as I'm listening to your QCast, a notification comes on my phone that I have a text message from you, and it was just odd. I'm like, does he know I'm listening to this right now? Like, it was just a really strange sensation. So yeah, you do try to, like, I don't, being not in the same region as Illinois Wesleyan or Wisconsin Stout or Mary Hardin Baylor, you don't know a ton about these teams, and so you spend the preseason getting ready for whoever you may play. And obviously that second night you don't know, so you dive more into that first game, which is for us obviously Illinois Wesleyan. So you watch some tape from last year, some video, to see it doesn't look like Ron has changed much, and we probably haven't changed much, so we'll have a little inkling maybe of what each other's doing, but a lot of it's going to be figured out on the fly during the game.
Do you like opening the season in a tournament format? To me, tournaments are always fun. Period. Do you like opening in a tournament where you've got you have four teams under one roof? Winners play winners, losers play losers. It's Mary Hardin Baylor and Wisconsin Stout. You know how good Mary Hardin Baylor is. Mm-hmm. You know how anytime you see like UW dash something in Division III, I don't care where they're picked in the league. I'm guessing they got some dudes. So like, do you like opening in a tournament format? Is this a good way to start, or is it a little awkward way to start? What's your take on that?
I've always liked it, and I've always tried to do it. And I'll kind of piggyback on what I think Jason Zimmerman told you, and when you talk to him, like a lot of this is about the experience and in addition to trying to have a strong strength of schedule, the tough part with playing in a tournament to try to help your strength of schedule, especially when you're going on the road, is you don't know necessarily who you're going to play.
Right.
Like if we would have opened with Mary Hardin Baylor, obviously that would have probably really helped our strength of schedule. We went to John Carroll last year for an opening classic, and it was us and Wittenberg, and we didn't know who the fourth team was going to be till late. And it ended up being Buffalo State, and Buffalo State, I think, won one game last year.
Right.
And I would like to know, like, playing that one game, how much that, I mean, I'm sure it affected our strength of schedule number at the end. I bet it was a pretty significant, ding in that number. So, but I knew Ron, I know this tournament's going to invite really good teams. Like, and I know with, like you said, like any team from Wisconsin is going to be really, really good. Right. Mary Hardin Baylor, with their coaching and their resources and their history, like they're going to be crazy good. And obviously right. Illinois Wesleyan is going to be good. So that, this is always, I look as someone who schedules for our program, we want to challenge ourselves in our non-conference schedule as much as we can. And taking a trip to Illinois Wesleyan, I've been there several times playing. I've been there as a member of the national committee, like being the site rep. And so I know it's going to be a first class event. We're really looking forward to it. I do want to know if I'm going to meet Jack Sikma, though. Ron hasn't returned that text yet.
I can't, I don't know if Jack is there this year or not. He's been there the first 2 years of the tournament. So I will try to get you a confirmation on that. Like by nice. Tomorrow, I'm going to shoot some texts out and I'll get you an answer very quickly. I hope Jack's there. And good,
I hope so too.
Good point about you were the men's basketball chair. Was it 1 year? It was like 12, 13, maybe. Was that when it was? Does that sound about right?
Great guess. I was on the national committee from 2009 to 2013 and served as the chair 2012, 2013. And it was a cool, besides the whole thing being a pretty cool experience, that was the year we played the Division 1, 2, and 3 championships in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And just a great experience with that, and some eye-opening experiences for sure. But just the ability to meet, a different set of people during that year was really, really cool.
It's amazing some of the things like I can't remember in my life, but when you give me a year like 12, 13, like I know that we lost at North Central in the game to go. The Elite Eight was going to Salem, right? And so we lost in that game. North Central went, Middlebury was there, and then the final two went to Atlanta. And so I don't know why this. I guess you're the same way, Mike. Is like the things I remember about basketball are fairly disturbing when I forget like much more important things in my life. I'll just leave it at that,
right? We talked about my being my 25th or 30th year of coaching, like it's the years run together. Like I had to look up some things today in anticipation of this conversation. I do remember the experience. I do remember it was ironically Mary Hardin Baylor and Amherst playing in the championship game.
Yeah.
But I remember very little about the 4 games, or I guess it was the semifinals in Salem, with quarterfinals and semifinals in Salem. And so we brought 8 teams to Salem that year, which is another cool experience to have so many good teams playing over 2 days. But yeah, just it was, and it's really cool to see how that national committee has maintained and even enhanced, how they go about the process. Getting to know Mike Schauer a little bit while he was chair, and we would talk occasionally about being on that committee and how to kind of go about things. And things are so much more advanced than they were 10 years ago with regard to that. It's been kind of cool to see.
Yeah, it's been a great progression. Like just going back to when you were in the chair and the people, it's been a great progression. It seems like every year it keeps getting a little better.
Yep.
I wanted to ask, just shifting gears a little bit. I've had a lot of people on the show that tried to do some other job first, and they just the coaching itch like took over. Damian Jablonski from Whitworth comes to mind. He was an engineer, actually. He's like an engineer. You graduated from Ohio Wesleyan. Most people might not know you started at Wittenberg. So you go to Wittenberg to play basketball. I think you go there and you transfer to Ohio Wesleyan. You were on great teams at Ohio Wesleyan, and you graduate and you get what, an accounting job? So you had a
Yep.
real world job in accounting. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. I had a great job right out of college, making pretty good money. And ironically, one of the kind of couple weekends I had off was when that 1988 national championship team was making their run in the NCAA tournament. So I came back to campus and watched Ohio Wesleyan beat Hope, and it was like 110 to 106
Wow.
in double overtime. And then the next week, Ohio Wesleyan played Illinois Wesleyan.
Yep.
The year Ron was the point guard, and the game was 106 to 103. And I'm standing on the sideline thinking, I really missed this. And so I eventually changed careers. I decided to go to grad school at Ohio State and get a master's degree in sports management. And while I did that, I volunteered on the Ohio Wesleyan staff for 3 years and got my start in coaching, making zero money, doing all kinds of temporary odd jobs to kind of make ends meet, and just kind of worked my way to this point where I've been doing it for 30 years as a head coach now.
There's, I don't know, there a ton of people in Division III that are very, very successful have a similar story where they started out as a volunteer assistant, and then they went somewhere that paid $10,000 a year, and they wanted it so bad that they were willing to grind their way through some really tough periods of time. Have things changed at all, Mike? Like there's people that'll be listening to this that are seniors. Maybe they're getting a grad degree or something, but they know they want to coach and they love Division III. Are things still like that? The need to kind of go where you can get something and just make the best of it go, or are they different now?
That's a great question. I think they're a little better in the fact that I think as a Division III assistant basketball coach, you can at least get by. You can rent an apartment. You can whatever, make a car payment, probably not have a lot left over after that. But if you work hard, if you gain experience, you can then move up. You can work camps in the summer. That's probably the same, where you make contacts and and then make relationships that help your career. I think that's probably similar to the way it was 30 years ago, but it's still hard, especially when you can go out in the quote unquote real world and make real money. The coaching profession, especially at our level, which is unfortunate, it's really, really hard. And you have to be really, really committed and really sacrifice early in your career to get to a point where it's comfortable to make a living. And you have to be willing to move and all those things. And I think it's a little better, but honestly, it's not. Like, I didn't make over $10,000 a year until I became a head coach when I was 29, when I got the Hiram job. I was an full-time assistant at Kenyon. I was also the head men's golf coach there, and was making $10,000 a year. And I don't think that exists anymore. At least it may, but not in some of the places that I know about for sure. But it's still pretty hard.
One thing just about kind of a coaching style, practice style. I listened to a podcast you were on. I think it was this past summer at some point, but I remember you talking about that you've really moved into preferring as much like 5-on-5 stuff as humanly possible versus, a lot of drill stuff. I think what you said is, guys like that more. They tend to learn from that more. Just talk a little bit about your preference to make practice as much 5-on-5 as possible.
Yeah. So I played for two very old school coaches when I played in college, Larry Hunter at Wittenberg and Gene Mahaffey at Ohio Wesleyan. And it was pretty much all drills all the time.
Wow.
And then as I've gotten into coaching as an assistant and now as a head coach, I just feel like, I know I sound like I'm the old man saying, get off my lawn. And maybe that's true, but I think kids learning ability to learn and willingness to learn things have changed, and you have to keep their attention on a more consistent basis and keep them interested and wanting to learn. And they want to do that by playing basketball. They don't want to do that by doing a 3-on-0 weave drill or whatever we used to do. And so over the years, and my guys that played for me my first couple of years in my career would not recognize what I'm talking about right now, because that was not me when I started my coaching career. But I think, and I think it's funner for me to coach too. Like, and my assistants over the years have laughed at me because I'll have this pretty elaborate practice plan with some drills on it at the beginning of practice, and we kind of want to build up into the 5-on-5 situation. And after we get warming up, I'm just like, you know what, let's just go up and down a little bit, and we'll coach what we need to coach within the concepts of the 5-on-5. And I think, it's been effective. It's probably not perfect, and it's probably not for everybody, but it keeps our guys invested, because they know if, when they come to practice, they're going to get to play basketball, and hopefully they'll learn something. And it's not just roll the balls out and you guys go up and down for 20 minutes and we'll stop it. Like, we stop it and we correct it and we teach and try to teach decision making and those kind of things like everybody does. But I've just felt like kids today, and again, I don't know if it's cell phones or whatever. I'm sure people blame that, but the attention spans aren't as quite as
absolutely
as long as they used to be.
It's very
so
real.
in order to keep their attention, we try to play 5-on-5. And the other thing we do is we don't practice all that long. I feel like at a certain point they're mentally on to other things,
right?
And so we want them there mentally, but we ask them, when we are in practice for however long we are, be there mentally, do the best you can, and then we promise you we'll keep it short so you can start thinking about other things. But again, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's worked for us pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very real thing. Today versus 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's tremendous. Like, it even impacts attendance. People don't go to basketball games, Division 1, 2, and 3 at the same rate. Like, if you look at Illinois Wesleyan's attendance or Hope's attendance or Calvin's, you will see good crowds, not great crowds most of the time. And that has to do with this changing society where everyone's on their phone all the time, and the attention span to sit at a game for an hour and a half is just not there with a lot of people. So I think you're smart adopting to what the best way that student athletes today will consume information. And another area to touch on, I think this is an area that you're like Ron Rose, is that I think I've heard you say you want player led, like the best teams you've had have been player led, not coach led. Talk a little bit about that, if you would, Mike.
Yeah, I think I think part of our job, number one, is to develop skills in our student athletes that they can carry on later in life. And I think part of that is giving them opportunities to lead. And I want to do that as guys go through our program. I'm just a big believer in that. If we're in an educational setting, that they're not going to learn how to dissect frogs or anything like that, but they can learn how to lead. They can learn how to overcome adversity and those kind of things. And so giving our guys, as they become juniors and seniors, opportunities to lead in our program, I think is very important. And so we talk about, with our seniors, like 15 minutes before practice, like grab a group of guys and, go through some finishing moves or whatever it may be, or go through some post moves. And that's where, guys like Jack Clement and Grant Spicer were so good for us last year. Like they relished the chance to get there before practice and, put our other guys through a mini individual workout. And we want to give those guys input into how we're playing and what we're doing too. I think you get buy-in that way. And so, I think you have to have a philosophy about it, and it has to all kind of fit together. Yeah. And then, if you're player led, they're going to be invested more. I'm not someone who yells and screams at them, and that's I don't, that's not my personality. I've never been that way. And again, my guys 25 years ago probably disagree with you, but I've evolved, I think, as someone who, I think we can learn more and get more done if the players are leading for the most part. Like, we're going to guide our guys that are leading, but I feel like that's something that's beneficial to everybody in our program.
Couple more questions for you, and then we'll start to wrap up. Is the NCAC this year? I can't remember all the voting points, but Wabash is I believe, a heavy favorite in terms of the preseason poll. When I was voting in the top 25, it wasn't until late in the process, like I was trying to figure out all these teams across the country, I just didn't realize that they returned everybody, like everybody, from a really good team, from an NCAA tournament team. Fair to I mean, they really are starting to get it rolling there in the league, and they really should be very tough this year with everything that they return.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, they have Kyle Broman's a great coach. His staff, Pat Sullivan, who's been with him a long time, like, those guys do a great job. And everyone thought when Jack Davidson left that Wabash would kind of fall back to the middle of the pack, and they did not.
Right.
Because they filled in some recruiting classes behind Davidson's class with some really, really good players.
Right.
What kind of gets lost in that is Worcester won our conference last year by 2 games.
Right.
Worcester was really, really good. Worcester still had 21 wins. Wabash finished in a tie for second with Ohio Wesleyan.
Right.
But Wabash, returns everybody, obviously made a run in our tournament at the end. And then they went to Case. I can't remember who. I think they lost to Whitewater in the first round.
Right.
In a close game. So I think their being picked first is very well deserved. I think Worcester was second. Denison was picked third. Again, I think they're a team that's up and coming.
Yep.
They've been talented, but not experienced. I think, the fact that they're picked third, I think coaches in the league feel like that experience, they've gotten that experience, and now they're ready to kind of burst on the scene. DePaul was picked fourth. As you talked about earlier, Rusty's going to do a great job there, and they return most of their team. We were picked fifth. I would say I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm hoping we don't finish that low. We've not finished that low in a long time. And so I thought that was interesting. There have been years where I've thought we've been picked too high. And there have been years when I've thought we've been picked too low. I feel like we're picked a little low here this year, but we've got to go out and prove that. And then Wittenberg was picked sixth. And I think us and Wittenberg were pretty close. So
right.
I do think we have depth in our conference. It's not like the UAA that, as I know you've talked about with,
right.
They're unbelievable with their depth and how good that depth is. I think our conference is probably a notch below theirs in terms of level, but not too far. But I think our conference race is going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's like we talked about earlier. Is the knock on the NCAC always used to be, and I think it was pretty fair. It was like a 2-team league, and we talked about, like, you changed that. You won it 3 times in a row, 15, 16, 17. You have the second most wins in the league over the last 10 years, and now it is a much deeper league. It's a totally different league than it used to be, and it's going to be really fun to follow the league this year. The last question I got to ask you, and I have to ask you about this 1988 game. I mean, I have to, because, I was a freshman at Illinois Wesleyan in 1989. So 2 years later. And obviously I'm kind of a Titan historian, and most people, people having beers after the game will talk about the greatest Illinois Wesleyan teams that didn't have Jack Sikma. And that one is the one, right? So you had Ron Rose as a point guard. 3rd year as a Titan, but he was a transfer from Division I Valparaiso. You had 7-foot Bill Braxick, who started at Division I Illinois State. Yeah. Jeff Keel, for me, is a top 3-4 Titan of all time. He's the best or second best Titan I've ever seen. And then, oh, by the way, you had Peterson, Coderre, etc. You guys had this Scott Tedder guy, and it sounds like this guy lit us up. But I got to ask you, what was that game like? It sounded like just a legendary Elite Eight game. You were in the building, correct? Like, talk
Yes.
through what that game was like.
So yes. So here's the funny part is, so I was the only starter from the year before that graduated and did not come back in 1988.
Wow.
And those guys never let me live that down. Like, we're still buddies. Scott Tedder's a really good friend of mine. Lee Rollinson, who was the 6'10" center on that team, was an awesome. Was a first team All-American as well that year. And the game was just unbelievable. The thing I remember about that was everyone was talking about that Illinois Wesleyan has this 6'10" guy from Illinois State who is huge, and how are we going to handle him? Well, we had our own 6'10" guy, and that kind of, that they probably neutralized each other, if I'm remembering correctly. I laughed. I told you this yesterday. I got a random text from Greg Mason, who was my assistant at center so long ago, and now he's doing a great job as the head coach at center. And he texted me some random Pantograph articles from 1988 about the preview leading up to that game. And I'm like, why is Greg Mason texting me these things? And then I checked your social media and saw you were posting that kind of stuff.
That came from me. Yes.
Yes. And I laughed at Denny Bridges' quote in one of them, that talking about Scott Tedder and how he just got most of his points off steals and layups, and that was it, and that's how he averaged 27 a game. And I think Scott went for 39 in that game.
He did.
And Scott was much more than that. Scott Tedder was one of the best, probably the best player at this level I've ever seen. Wow. He scored 2,500 points. Led everything in steals, and like, he was incredible. 6'3" guard. He could left-handed, could shoot. He got under people's nerves on the other team. He was a great teammate. He was just one of those guys. And he's still so invested in our program. He'll listen to this, and he'll be so happy that I talked about him. It's going to be unbelievable. But he went on, such a cool story. So he was Division III Player of the Year in basketball and baseball that year.
Wow.
So an unbelievable athlete. Only came to Ohio Wesleyan because the coaches at the time would let him do both. And went on to have a 10 or 11-year minor league career with the Chicago White Sox, and was on the Birmingham Barons the same time Michael Jordan.
Oh my God.
That's so awesome. He has some unbelievable Michael Jordan stories, and about playing basketball with him at the apartment complex in Birmingham, Alabama, like stuff like that, which is really, really cool. But yeah, it was an unbelievable game. Like, our gym doesn't hold a lot of people anyway, and there were 5 or 6 people, 5 or 6 deep, like under the baseline, and it was hot, and like, officials weren't calling anything, and it was just a great game.
Yeah,
I think I done, like, obviously, like, one, like, that was just a great game. Like, it would have been sad. It was sad one team had to lose, because I think the other team was going to go on and win the national championship, which obviously happened.
Which the Battling Bitches won that 1988 national championship. And again, there's the great thing about following your team is that there's legendary games and moments. And even when you weren't there, like me, I've heard about that Ohio Wesleyan game about 3,000 times. And so I had to ask you about that. And shouts to Scott Tedder. Hopefully he is watching the QCast. and yeah, he dropped 39 on us for sure. I saw the box score yesterday. Well, I tell you what, Mike, this has been a ton of fun, and I think it is really cool that the Titans are opening up with the Battling Bishops on Friday night. I'm flying up with my wife. We're flying up Friday afternoon. So assuming no flight troubles, we'll be there for game number 1, and I'll see you there and say hello. I do want to let you kind of cover if there's anything we didn't get to or any final thoughts you have. Let me ask what you have for the QCast viewers as we start to wrap up here today.
Yeah, I don't have much. Like, we talked a little before we went on air. Like, I hope this isn't your least watched QCast in history. It's fun listening to you. And like, I enjoy listening to you talk to other coaches. Like, I so enjoyed the Jason Zimmerman interview.
He was great. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I've heard you with some others, like actually as Julie Folks, the coach at Transylvania, like that was
Unbelievable. She
awesome
was
too.
great.
And like those conversations, like I don't know if they motivate me, but they reinforce like some thoughts I have about coaches
Sure.
and coaching and things that are that you know, they make, you know, it just makes me smile listening to those things and going on. Like, I chose the right profession. There's some really good people in this profession, and there's really good people that follow Division III basketball, and you're one of those guys. You know, Ryan Whitnable as well, who obviously covers a lot of the great, or Region 7,
Region 7 it is now. Yep.
Things, and you know, with his connection to Marietta, is kind of cool, because John Vanderwall was an assistant of mine here as well, and we're very good friends. And you're talking to him was really cool too. So, I'm so like glad to be a part of the Division III community, and what we're able. You know, we've got a coach from an opposing team talking to, you know, an Illinois Wesleyan graduate who's one of their biggest fans, and we play each other in 5 days, and you know, it's a great conversation. There's not any animosity or anything, and I don't think you get that in a lot of other walks of life. So
I don't think so.
Pretty cool to be a part of this, and I thank you for having me on.
It's this has been overdue, and well, I mentioned 29 years as a head coach. I think I forgot to mention the win to 436. That's like there's big numbers on the board here, Mike.
It's a credit to longevity more than incredible success. Like
436 is 436. I mean, that's a big number.
It is a big number. That's, I guess, 64 to 500, right? So hopefully in like 8 or 9 years I can get there. Like, that would be kind of nice.
Well, I'll just say this. I hope you don't start chipping away at that Friday. I mean, you know that I can root for the rest of the season. The rest of the season I could give you. Friday, I mean, I hope you're still at 436, you know, Friday at like 9 p.m. I got to say, Mike.
I understand your sentiments in that regard, and I don't hold that against you at all.
Well, thank you so much for this. And I look forward to seeing you Friday and Saturday evenings. I'll introduce Ro to you. I've told her she's got to meet Coach Cliff and Coach Mike, so she's going to look forward to that. Folks, that's Mike DeWitt, the head men's basketball coach at Ohio Wesleyan. That's the QCast Season 4, Episode 12. Happy opening week of Division III. Let's have a great season, everyone. Mike, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.